Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lab. In this lab, we're going to show you how to use the AWS Command Line. So you'll need to log into the AWS console. Okay, so here I am. I've logged into the AWS console. And the first thing I'm actually going to go through and do is delete my existing EC2 instance because I want to start a new EC2 instance. So I'm going to go in and go to instance state, go through and click terminate. Hopefully I don't have termination protection on, so I don't. You can click yes. And I've gone ahead and deleted my little EC2 instance. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is launch a new instance. I'm going to select the Amazon Linux AMI. I'm going to use a T2 micro, and I'm going to go ahead in here. And if you remember when we originally started, we had IAM role and we had it as S3 admin access. So I'm just going to leave my IAM role as none. I'm going to leave everything else as the standard settings and go ahead and hit next. I'm going to use 8 gigs worth of storage. Next, I'm going to tag this instance. I'm just going to call it EC2 no roles. And we're going to go ahead and hit next, and I'm going to use my existing security group, which was my web DMZ. I'm going to go ahead and hit review and launch. It gives me a little warning message just saying I've left SSH open to the world, but I wouldn't worry about that. It's not going to be live for very long. I'm going to go ahead and hit launch, and I'm going to use my existing EC2 key pair. Okay, so that is now launching an instance. Now, while that is happening, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the console over here, and I'm going to go into Identity Access Management, and I'm going to create an entirely new user, and I'm going to give him a specific set of permissions. So if we go into Users, and we're going to create a new user, and I'm going to call this guy Joe Blogs, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Create. And it says here, your user's been created successfully, show user credentials. I'm going to hit download, and this will download it to my downloads directory. As you can see, it's downloaded the credentials down there. And just as a reminder, it's created an access key ID and then a secret access key. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and hit close. I'm going to go over to my groups, and I'm going to create a new group, and this group is going to be my S3 group. And basically everyone within this group has full access to S3. So that's the policy I'm going to attach to this group is Amazon S3 full access. I'm going to hit next, and we're going to create the group. And then I'm going to go into my group, and I'm going to add a user to the group, and we're going to add Joe Blogs to this group. Okay, simple so far. So we've got a new user. His name's Joe Blogs. He's been added to the group, my S3 group, and he has full access to S3. I'm going to go back and go over to EC2, and hopefully our EC2 instance is now ready. And we can see one running instance, and there we go. So my web server is now being terminated, but my EC2 no roles server is currently up. If you scroll down, you can actually see here it says IAM role and it's blank. So this EC2 instance has no IAM role assigned to it. And notice that I don't get the option to add a role. And that's actually a really important exam topic that can come up. You can only assign a role to an EC2 instance when you create that instance. You can't then go back and assign a role after the EC2 instance has been created. So do remember that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to this EC2 instance using the public IP address in my terminal window. So if you can go ahead and connect to your EC2 instance. So I'm going to use this command to connect to my EC2 instance. So SSH EC2-user at then the public IP address, and then the switch -i, and then my EC2 key.pem. Go ahead and hit enter. It'll say that it doesn't recognize the fingerprint. Just go ahead and hit yes. And there we go. We've now connected to this EC2 instance. I can go in and apply updates if I want, but I'm not going to in this case. And I'm just going to elevate my privileges to root, and then I'm going to clear the screen. Okay, so we are in our EC2 instance and we want to use the command line. And so what I want to do is I want to see my S3 buckets as a list. So what I can do is I can use the AWS command line. And the way I do that is by invoking AWS. And then I need to invoke a particular service. So it would be S3 and then LS. Now, right now, nothing is going to happen because I haven't loaded my credentials into this AWS command line. And it's important to understand that the AMI that we're using is the Amazon Linux AMI, and it comes with the command line pre-installed. Now, if you used another AMI, such as Red Hat or one of the other ones, it may not have the command line installed. So make sure you use the Amazon Linux AMI, which has the command line already pre-installed. So right now it's saying it can't locate my credentials. I can configure my credentials by running AWS config. So let's do that. AWS configure. Okay, so now it's asking for my access key ID. So this is the access key ID that was generated when we set up the Joe Blogs account. Now I did download this and I'm just going to go and put it into my clipboard by opening up that CSV file. So we can see here in this CSV file, I've got my username, my access key ID, and my secret access key. So I'm going to go ahead and copy out my access key ID and I'm going to enter it in here. And then my secret access key, I'm just going to go back and get it from here. So again, I'm going to highlight the whole thing and then paste it in there. So now it's asking for my default region name. So I'm in Ireland and it's EU West -1. If you don't know what your region name is, you can actually just go to this web page, AWS Regions and Endpoints. Just type it into Google. It'll be the first link that comes up. You can go and scroll to EC2, click here, and it will give you the different regions that you can enter. So EU East 1, EU West -2, etc., etc. Don't confuse regions with availability zones. Make sure you don't put A, B, or C or anything silly after that. Just use these regions here. It then asks me for my default output format, and I'm just going to hit enter. You don't need to enter anything in there. Now, with any luck, I'm just going to clear the screen, but hopefully we have configured our AWS command line correctly. Okay, so the way I would do this now is I type in AWS S3, so this is the service that I want to use, and then the command that I want to run. So at the moment, I just want to list what's in my S3 environment. And there we go, we can see my 3 S3 buckets. And you'll also notice that these buckets are global. It's using all my buckets around the world. If you remember, my backup bucket, A Cloud Guru, was in a completely different region to my other S3 buckets. So there we go, I've listed everything in S3. Now, if you want help knowing what different commands to use, you can type in AWS S3 and then help. And it will give you this really helpful description. You can actually scroll down. So if I go all the way to the bottom, it says available commands. So I can do AWS S3 and we were using LS. MB is make bucket. MV is move. RB is remove bucket. RM is to remove objects. Sync is to sync things across. Website is to enable website, etc. And in some ways it can be okay reading this in an SSH terminal. In a lot of ways it's a lot easier to read the AWS documentation on the website. When you're done, just hit Control C. When you're done, you can just come out of that by hitting Control C or escape, and then you can go on and clear the screen. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you is where our credentials are stored. So we've logged in as root, and if you go ahead and just go CD and then the tilde button, that will take you to the home screen. You can type in ls and you'll see that there's nothing here, but that's because there's a hidden directory. So you go cd.aws, and if we type in ls, we'll see two files. We'll see our config files and our credential files. So if we nano credentials, we'll be able to see here our access key ID and our secret access key. Now, this is a really important point. Imagine if this EC2 instance was compromised. Right now I've left port 22 open to the world. Imagine if somebody got my private key and somehow found a way onto this EC2 instance. They can then just go into this file and take my access key ID and my secret access key. And the thing about the access key ID and the secret access key is you can install the AWS Command Line tools anywhere in the world. You can install them on your laptop, you can install them on a Windows device or on your MacBook at home. And I actually use them quite frequently, on my own personal devices. I have the AWS Command Line tools installed. You can actually access somebody's environment wherever you are around the world using this access key ID and this secret access key. So for that reason, it can be inherently unsafe to store these on your EC2 instances. So how can we get around this? Well, that's where roles come in. Now, roles mean that you don't have to store these credentials on your EC2 instances. An EC2 instance can assume a role. So we're going to go and have a look at how that works in the next lab. For now, I'm going to go in and terminate this instance. And the other thing I'm going to go do is delete the Joe Blogs user, and I would encourage you to delete that user as well. So I'm just in the AWS console here. I'm going to go through and just terminate this instance. I didn't have termination protection turned on, and so I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, terminate. That is now going ahead and terminating the instance. You can see my little terminal window is unhappy because I've just lost my connection. I'm going to go back down to IAM, and I'm going to go in and clear out all the user accounts that I'm not currently using. So we've got Fred Jones, Joe Blogs, and John Smith. These are all users that I'm not using. I'm going to go ahead and hit delete. And we're now going to go ahead and in the next lab, we'll learn how to use roles. So that's it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.